Hi dear friend, welcome in this new Daoland healthcare video. Today we are going to talk about the vaccine. I had another plan, but because of the many questions that I got, I think it is high time that I give a little bit of an advice or an overview, or whatever you like to call it. I'm not going to tell you you have to take the vaccine, or I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't take the vaccine, and that is not how I roll. But the question is if you should take the vaccine, yes or no, of course. You have to understand the phase of the COVID pandemic is manifold. There are different countries with partly maybe different symptoms as a result of local circumstances like food, like landscape, like climate, and so on and so on. But in general, the cohesiveness of the disease globally is relatively large. In the beginning stage, you see that a lot of people, they have flu-like symptoms. This is why many people are confused and they think it's just a flu, because it started out as a flu. The virus, when it enters your body, like some other viruses, it actually goes very deep into your system. And it's a little bit like an HIV virus, in the sense that it goes deeply into the cells of your body, where it starts reproducing by allowing your cells to rewrite themselves and start producing new virus particles. You might understand that a virus is not really a living being, but it is a little bit like a nanobot, you can say. So it is like a half-life zombie kind of machine, which is having only one function, namely to reproduce itself. That's basically how we can see it. On another level, maybe we can have a spiritual discussion about the nature of the life of a virus, but I don't think it's worth it at this point. We can see in countries like Brazil, United States, other countries, there are thousands of people infected, hundreds of thousands of people infected, and there are too many deaths to count. It is not as bad yet as the Spanish flu some 100 years ago, but it is starting to look like a similar kind of event. We have taken some measurements through which the world has tried to help itself, but it has in general in some parts of the world not been very effective. The problem is that there is not a broad recognition of what the virus actually is. And first of all, when it comes into the body, it starts affecting your neural structure, and it also starts affecting your chemical structure. And as a result of that, there will be neural changes in your body over time. And the thing is that the long-term effects of the virus on your body seem to take longer to take effect, but also have a longer lasting effect on your body, and nobody really yet knows what time it takes. In April, May, the first people started talking about secondary symptoms after the flu-like symptoms appeared. That is in Europe. In China, and from China, these reports were already there for a long time, and that made also, I think, the Chinese government decide that hard measures were the only way. The hard measures that were already taken for Wuhan that time, they were already too late, because the virus already had spread all over the world, as we now know, because already in November, December, I heard the first messages about a strange new flu-like disease spreading around over the world. And in January, it actually became like world global news, and in February we realized, like, okay, this is going to be a pandemic. We're not going to be able to stop it because we are stubborn. We don't take the measures that are required, as we would have seen from Wuhan, where since that time outbreaks have been limited. Of course, you stretch out the spread of the flu over a longer time, and eventually everybody probably will be affected in case there is no vaccine found. But fortunately enough, because of a huge effort, there are some vaccines now, and we're going to talk about to yes or no take that vaccine. But I'm going to provide you first with some context. These neurological changes, these are important, because this is the largest part of suffering. They will not kill you, but like with Lyme disease and other diseases, they will for a long time cause you to have some debilitating effects, which will hinder you in the progression of your life. And they are also a little bit similar, like burnout symptoms, and so on and so on. So I will discuss in another video what actually is going on into your body and what you could do with Chinese medicine as a result of that. This is not the video to do that, because this is not a choice that we are facing. Then also one other effect is that we have found, not we personally, but researchers have found that a lot of people suffer as a result of the COVID virus, premature aging of the brain. That means that the brain plasticity of your brain neural structures is being degraded to a point that they can say probably your brain ages about 10 years. That is, of course, because you are less able to develop your brain or less able to use your brain. Of course, you can recover from that by using your brain actively, but if you see how much difficulties some people already have with reading and concentrating, then that would not be easier after that time. I'm not sure if you are less developed as a reader and as a student in life, if then your brain degrades more fast when you have a virus. As far as I know, there is no research being done into that yet, so we still have to take wild guesses on that level, and I'm not going to be the one to make these kind of guesses. Then, as a result of the virus, also you can see that people in general are going to feel very tired, and this is one of the most long-lasting effects. It takes a long time to recuperate from the virus. What you hear is that when it sets on and the symptoms become visible, it comes a little bit like a hammer blow into your body. All of a sudden, something that you do every day, like making a sprint of 100 meters, all of a sudden isn't possible anymore. Children, adults, they're all affected by that, and as a result of that, they feel like the qi is gone. This is basically the Chinese medicine definition of any kind of lung disease that is debilitating the lungs because of obstructing the lungs. So you get qi deficiency, and as a result of this weakness of the lung, you can't produce the effects that you need to be able to do your daily activities. A little bit similar like depression or with long-lasting chronic disease. These effects are very similar. And for this we have to ask ourselves a few questions. I think we need to talk a little bit about natural remedies in general. Of course, I am specialized in Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbal medicine, massage, and so on. We know from China that there have been big efforts to use Chinese medicine in the treatment of COVID. And there have been some successes with when people have very serious symptoms, then the effect is a little bit less. But for the people with mild symptoms to semi-serious symptoms, the effects are quite good. The problem is, though, that people in the West have been reluctant to take Chinese medicines in that sense. The reason partly is because the training of Chinese medicine practitioners in the West is lacking. I have seen conferences with Chinese medicine people from the West getting instructed by professors from China and their experience, and you can see that they are completely of a different class. So the questions that they could ask, they were not sufficient for the importance of the issue, and it means that their background in Chinese medicine was not good enough, whether it would be Western science or Chinese medicine science. Of course, the research that comes out of China is all based on Western medicine research and then the use of Chinese medicine in that. That is another issue that we can discuss also, and we have been discussing this issue for a long time. The choice for the alternative medicine could have helped a lot of people, but what you see is that a lot of people, because they don't really understand Chinese medicine, when they practice Chinese medicine, they try to boost your immune system. Well, that is actually the problem, because at the moment when you boost your immune system, you more quickly come into a cytokine storm, and as a result of that, you run more risk. So that is really stupid. And if anybody tells you to boost your immune system, actually that is wrong. What you have to do is you have to control your panic response. And at the moment when you control your panic response, you gradually start noticing that because of cooling the body, the buildup of slime in your lungs is going to be less, and as a result of that, the risk of suffocating from the slime and the dampness in your lungs is going to be much less. And that is an important factor in the control of that. So cooling down your system is the first measurement that you can take. If you practice Qigong and you can cool yourself through your Qigong, that's great. When you do energy work, you heat yourself up all the time. And this heat is good in the onset of it at the moment when you are infected, but 5 minutes later it actually makes no sense anymore because it's already in your system, and it will go penetrate deep into your system according to the principles of Chinese medicine, and it will eventually come into your organs, they say in Chinese medicine, which would be comparable with entering into the cells in the Western biology. And as a result of that, the problem becomes more chronic, and this is why the onset of long-term symptoms actually takes place. The issue, of course, is that there is not enough validation for alternative medicine in general. I don't know about homeopathy or Indian medicine or African natural medicine or Native American natural medicine or Aboriginal natural medicine or to understand what their solutions are and if these are effective. There's very little news that you hear about it in this time because basically all the media focus on the, well, industrialized drug production. And there are a lot of issues with that production process, of course, in general. So that is a handicap. I would have been able to train people myself, to work in hospitals, to treat a lot of people. This hasn't happened, of course, and it hasn't happened in other countries. There are more people who are able to do these kind of things, and we should have been asked to participate in that because it is, of course, an international effort to try to stem the onset of a pandemic, and any help should have been welcomed and researched to see if anything would come out of that. And even if only 10% of all the people who are being treated by alternative medicine could have been helped and release the pressure on the general nursing system and the treatment system, that would have already been great. If advices like I give would have been investigated and people would have been able to learn methods to cool themselves down so that they don't force themselves to get into a higher temperature, then that would have been great, of course, also. But that is, it's not yet post hoc comments because I already warned about this in February and March. And but I see that most people who study Chinese medicine, they basically talk Western medicine ideas, and as a result of that, they aggravate the situation for a lot of people. Of course, it's good to have a strong immune system in general, but it is not going to help you to battle the COVID once you have it. What people don't realize is that there are too many cases of people who have COVID, get very seriously sick, and die from it without having an actual reason. The story in the media, of course, is that people have preconditions which cause them to become very sick, and as a result of that, maybe die or something like this. But that is not a guarantee. Of course, yes, as with any viral disease, all people are more likely to get infected, and they have a very weak system. They can't really do very much because the aging process is a heating process. They're all the time overheated, and as a result of that, they're more vulnerable to all kinds of things. It is a little bit similar with anything, also any disease that causes premature aging. And as we know from the whole COVID situation, is that COVID causes premature aging. So it increases your aging process. So anything you can do to slow down your aging, of course, is very important. Irony is that kids are being affected by the COVID also, and they are, of course, spreaders. We know that, and it doesn't really matter what age you are. We already know from small kids, from the daycare to the primary school and the high schools, that they are usually the cause why parents get sick. Of course, you can get sick from your colleagues, but your colleagues get it from their kids. So, the whole society is set up for a guaranteed success for a pandemic, of course, because of our social structures are based on the intertwinement of family life and work life and so on and so on. You can't change that, so that will stay like that. The sad thing, of course, is that also children are ending up in the hospital, even though it is a smaller percentage, and even very small kids are ending up in the hospital. And we already know as a prediction that when there are going to be vaccines, when babies are going to be born, they might immediately get infected by the COVID if it is around somewhere. And then they carry, of course, the antibodies with them their whole life if they survive that moment. They already talk about inoculating little children from the moment of birth, and that is of course pretty much a dramatic thing to think of. We know that to solve the situation by a mass immunity, about 70 people of the world have to become infected, and that also means that millions of people are going to die. To have that happen is pretty much an inhumane thing, and to have that happen is pretty much an inhumane thing. And as a result of that, I'm already getting a headache that people even contemplate that, and that we already know from politicians in several countries that they really try to push that message. And it has been pushed also in my own country for a moment, to think like, maybe that's a good solution, until people maybe did the calculations and realized that if you do that, you do lose a significant portion of the population, leaving a lot of people sad and grieving, which would be good for my work because it will provide me with a lot of work. Counseling is an important part of Chinese medicine. And as you have maybe seen when I do my posts on when you see my post on psychedelic Taoism, that there is a form of psychiatry and psychological and psychotherapeutic options in Chinese medicine, which are not used by the current educational model of Chinese medicine, because people are not aware of the actual Taoist aspects of Chinese medicine, even though people think acupuncture is Taoist. I mean, it is ridiculous. The problem is that the lack of humaneness is an issue, and we live in a time where lack of humaneness is going to give you a backlash, and as a result of that, as a politician, of course, you're going to be not re-elected, and if you're a dictator, people might riot against you when there are too many people are dying. So it is not an option for many reasons, and it's also not an option for the economy, and there's not an option for for anything. So what other options are there? With the preventive measures, it is like this. When there is a pandemic going on, whether you accept it's a pandemic or not, whether you accept whether the disease is deadly or not, you should always take preventive measures. You can say, okay, why don't we take preventive measures when there is a regular flu going on? Yes, you should take preventive measures too, but it is your personal responsibility. People talk about freedom. That means they should also take the freedom to take personal responsibility when there is a flu or when there is COVID or any other kind of disease. When HIV was raging, everybody was asked, please start wearing condoms, in a time when people were very happy to just do everything they want without any form of protection, just other than taking anti-conceptive measures to prevent that everybody would get babies all the time. Since that time, a lot of things changed, and people are much less free in their expression of their desires, and they are being more careful, which is right, of course. The way how you do that, of course, can be done in many different kind of ways, but you have to be careful. That is just how it is. You have to protect yourself, you have to protect your families, your friends, and you have to protect the people that you would like to be with, but you can't be with. Anyway. Right? So a lot of people, they decide like, okay, now I have HIV, that means this I cannot do, this I cannot do, this I cannot do, this I cannot do, which is, a good thing. With any kind of virus, you should take protective measures. When you have a flu, you shouldn't go out without a mask. In Asia, since SARS, that is actually pretty much normal. People wear masks all the time. And I remember one of my ex-girlfriends, she said like, okay, when I go out, I don't want everybody to look at my face all the time. So I'm very happy with a mask. Of course, there's also all the camera systems nowadays everywhere. So wearing a mask also in that sense politically frees you a little bit of the pressure of facial recognition. and you can go as far as you want with these masks as you like. I'm not too fond myself of a lot of measures that governments take or that companies take to protect themselves against, whatever kind of risk they perceive there to be, or which they create because of their paranoia. Self-protection is, of course, very important. In Asia, they take a very much a top-down approach, where they tell people, okay, you have to use an app, you have to wear a mask, you have to wear gloves, so you have to do all kind of protective things. You have to keep distance from each other, and as a result of that, because the people are generally pliant because of knowing how the governments work, they maybe feel resentment, but they do it in general, and they are happy for it when they see that the numbers of infections go down. So, they have a positive feedback loop. In our societies, we see that a lot of people, they are willing to comply with suggestions from the government, which is a good thing. But I do see on the street that a lot of people, as soon as they are out of the supermarket, they put off their mask. A lot of people, they only half-baked wash their hands. The people who clean the carts in the supermarket, they do only half a job. And in fact, they should take measurements before you go into the shop with your temperature, if your temperature is safe. Because people who have COVID, they are still being caught on the street shopping or telling about it or anything like that. So that is, of course, not good. Of course, we also don't have the societal structure where we support each other and do shoppings for each other. So I can imagine that some people, they feel like, who could I ask to help me? So because I can't ask anybody, I will do my shoppings myself, and I will not be a risk because I wear a mask, because I have to wear a mask. But of course, the virus is being not only spread through your breathing, but through your presence in general. In Taoist medicine, any kind of pestilence, as we call them, they spread through multiple ways, and they only have one purpose, namely to spread by doubling themselves and trying to reach out to other people. I see a lot of people not keeping enough distance from other people, and I must admit also sometimes, because of being in a hurry or something like this, I overstep the boundaries of the 1.5 meter, even though 1.5 meter in fact is not enough. 6 meter would have been better, but then of course the shops definitely have to close their doors altogether, because they wouldn't be able to do their business, which is just a symptom of how our system is actually damaging our society because of its commerce. People have to keep up with paying high rents and salaries and so on. Well, of course, society should be a communal thing, just like with ants. I don't see ants walking around with credit cards, and I don't see grasshoppers walking around with credit cards, and I don't see a forest walking around with credit cards. And forests have many different kind of species working together for the success of the forest. So if we start behaving a little bit more natural, we have to start thinking about, how that actually works. So for preventive measures, we also have to think about our future, and that means that we have to think forward, like, okay, how can we restructure our society to become more natural and actually prevent that we become a pest for the rest of the world, but also how we become a pest for ourselves and cause these kind of plagues to happen. The prediction is right now that possibly every 10 years we run the risk of a pandemic like this. In the last 20 years we have, already longer than that, but we have seen many pandemics like HIV, which is not finished, Ebola, which is not finished, MERS, which has not been finished, now COVID, and I probably miss a few swine, bird, whatever kind of flus, which also have been around and have been affecting people, and for which there were, happily enough measures to make sure that it didn't spread around worldwide. I was for a moment afraid with the Ebola thing, when people started to get affected and being moved around all over the world, that could have been a spreading event where the Ebola virus could settle in different continents. We know, of course, Ebola virus is being kept on different continents. It is also known that there is ice melting everywhere in the world and new viruses come out, old viruses come out. Some of them are already in our genetic makeup and they could be reactivated when live versions are coming out. We know that some viruses, they can survive for millions of years, and just temperature change could reactivate them. So we have to be a little bit more conscious of the whole of nature. Now we do know that these things work like that, and this is how you take preventive measures. You don't take preventive measures such as how you add an ointment or a plaster or something, a bandage. No, you take preventive measures not only for now, but you take for the future. And that means that we have to decommercialize our societies to make sure that we start thinking about the things that are important, namely human survival, human coexistence with the rest of nature, human coexistence between each other, and so forth and so forth. We are already with too many people in the world, so if we don't learn to do things the smart way, we can cull ourselves by these pandemics, like would happen with rabbits or rats or something like this, and that viruses come out and all kind of other things come out through, like famine, through which a lot of people will die. War, in our cases, of course, through which a lot of people can die, and but as a result of that, we continuously remain under this level of extinction or change. And I think change is probably the best solution. With a little bit of smarts, we can of course do things a lot better. So here, so far, this is context. A pandemic is a great opportunity to share with each other how humane we are. And that means that we have to induce more study for all people about what it means to be a human and how we can cooperate and how we can create the openness that is necessary for everybody to understand what is actually going on and what is our risk. At this moment, everything, because of commercial and politicized mass media, is, well, becoming difficult to understand who speaks truth and who doesn't speak truth. And there are certain kind of rules, like when do you trust an article, when do you not trust an article. And the fact that a recommended institute or a recommended doctor is saying something is not necessarily a guarantee. But footnotes which refers to data which shows where the information comes from, of course, very often is very important. And not like a reference like, yeah, this person says this or this person says that, or quickly showing a paper like Donald Trump was very famous for by waving with something around. See, here I have the proof, and like, I know the proof, you don't need to know the proof. That's basically what it is about. You can show headings of papers and letters, but it is not a proof. Letters are not a proof. Rumors are not a proof. You have to show the hard data, so that means you have to have comparable data and you have to measure it out, and you have to show people how they can measure it out to make sure that they can calculate it for themselves and that they don't have to believe you. They shouldn't believe you. Data should be free. Information should be free. Knowledge should be free, and it should be open source so that everybody can contribute to it. As a humanity, we have to think about the fact that we have particular kind of goals as humans in relationship to our survival. So we have to work together on improving the quality of life to reach shared goals like well-being for all beings, including ourselves, of course, and a relative comfort in life, so that we do not that we do not fall back to our previous more natural life, where we only became like 30, 35 years old of age, as you can still see in some poor countries where they have been impoverished because of the exploitations by the rich countries and the rich corporations, of course. We want to reduce the chances of pandemics, wars, and everything else happening. This is where human cooperation is for. The lack of openness and suggested openness by all kind of shadowy media causes people who are generally not too radical, people who are maybe even reasonable, or people who have particular political thoughts about the well-being of human beings, and so on, to all of a sudden become a form of neoliberalist, and from neoliberalist to become, well, neo-Nazis is almost the right word, by taking radical views against the protection of humanity as a whole. They consider in the same valid ways as you would consider that taking a vaccine is valid, that fighting against a vaccine is going to save humanity. And really there is no answer for that. It is not possible in this way to research data in such a way that we can come to an objective understanding of the situation as it is. So that makes it very difficult to say anything in favor of anything. I would not be able to give you an advice about what to do. And as a result of that, I can only give you your options. When we talk about vaccines, of course, by nature, natural immunity is the best against any form of, infection for anything. I am not a big fan of medication in general. When my clients come to me and they ask me for herbs or anything like that, I try to avoid giving them herbs if I can, because everything you ingest, according to Chinese medicine, is primarily a poison, so it can do damage to you. Whether you take a homeopathic medicine or Ayurvedic or African or Aborigine or Native American medicine, especially when you take hallucinogenic medicine or any other kind of thing, you take herbs according to Western school or Chinese school, doesn't really matter. Primarily they are going to affect you and influence you, and that might actually be harmful because of all kind of reasons. They might be helpful, yes, but usually you only prescribe herbs as a last resort because of the potential risk of herbs. You don't take herbs for just anything. If you take herbal tea, for instance, you can easily affect yourself in such a way that you eventually get a chronic disease because of all the time drinking herbal tea. You don't take superfoods for the simple reason that when you take them in overdose, you're actually going to affect your system in a negative way, and as a result of that, cause all kind of problems. Everything that you do has to be done with moderation to make sure that variation is actually your best medicine, and then you can prevent a lot of herbal stuff. There's other ways, of course, but you have to think forward on that, on what might happen to you later. So that means that preventive medicine in general is a better option for immunity or for anything else that might happen to you. But for preventive medicine, you have to study, you have to understand how your body works, how your mind works, how your feelings work, how the environment works, how society works. There's a lot of things that you actually have to know to be able to manage your own health. And that is where people usually draw the line. They like their opinions, they don't like to do the work. This is what Lao Tzu said in the Tao Te Ching. He said, my Tao is very easy to understand, it's just difficult to practice. And this is just what this is about. To become healthy, to stay healthy, to regulate your health, all these kind of things, they take study and they take time. So that would be my advice. Of course, the Daoland program as a healthcare system is based on that idea, that namely things are not simple, they are complicated, and as a result of that you might need all kind of different kind of informations, and to have information available for that is of course very important. I don't have all this information, you don't have all this information, so the only thing that we can do is we can gather this information, and Chinese medicine is our primary reason of existence, but the Daoland healthcare program can be applied to anything. So it's not necessarily only a Chinese medicine thing. That is just my thing. You have to understand that is my thing. When you look at the humaneness of society, you can say, okay, all the natural solutions are not humane right now because the damage is just too big to humanity as a whole. So that means that because of our awareness, trying to find a common solution that is applicable to everybody is important. Because we didn't take the preventive measures, because we didn't protect ourselves in relationship to nature and nature to ourselves also, we are now at this moment sitting on the blisters of our wrong actions in the past. This is cause and effect. This is just a normal process, and it can't really change that now anymore, because but we can try to prevent it for the future, and that is an important aspect of what we have to do. But there is the choice for the vaccine. There are different kind of vaccines, and not all vaccines are equally valid or even equally good. The Chinese vaccine has a validity of 78%, what I understand. Some of the Western vaccines, they boast on 90% success rate, or 92% success rate, or 94% success rate. I'm not going to go into these kind of details because there's no time and there's no space for that. But in reality, you have to say that when you take a vaccine, it is a little bit like a gamble. You have to understand it's not a guarantee, right? You might be that small percentage of people who cannot get helped. There's also a small percentage, relatively, of course, 4 or 5%, that you're going to die if you get the disease. There's also a, say, 10%, 50% chance that the vaccine is not going to work for you, or is actually going to make you sick. This is also there at the same time.
So this is a gamble. When you take a vaccine, that's a gamble. When you don't take a vaccine, it's also a gamble. So in both ways, it is going to be a gamble. You have to realize that the choice is not as black and white as you would like.
But governments, societies, they create particular kind of rules. So your choice is, will I gamble this way or will I gamble that way? Of course, it's not your personal choice, it's our humane choice, it's our humanity's choice. So it is something that we have to do together. We have to come to a solution which is acceptable to both. The vaccines won't work if only, like, say, 20-30% of the people are vaccinated. When only the West is vaccinated and not Africa, not Asia, or not other areas where people have less economic power to actually buy the vaccine or get the vaccine or spread the vaccine, then at that moment, of course, also it's not going to work. So we already know that because the situation is as it is, there's no economic equality in the world, there is no freedom equality in the world, there's no social equality in the world. There are going to be people who get the vaccine, if they want to have it, only like in 5 years or 6 years time, when all the millions have been made by the big corporations, and the governments have been securing, the rich governments have been securing the safety, the relative safety of their own country. But as a result of that, you will get splits between countries, and they will not let anybody in without a vaccine. So that means that they will use, most likely, and are already using vaccines as an excuse to close the border for particular kind of people they don't want to have. This is something that right-wing politicians, of course, already want for a long time for other reasons, but now the regular governments will have a reason to do that too. It is not going to help the progress of the world as a whole, so that would be an ill-advised way. Making sure that everybody makes a fist for the spread of a vaccine, if we choose to all take a vaccine, is great. If we take preventive measures and we put ourselves in self-isolation, if we do this really very radical and wear gloves, wear masks, and all these kind of other things, then we might also be able to kill off the virus, but it will take way more effort from people, because that is not enough then that 40% of the people are going to go in self-isolation, the rest just does whatever they want because they don't want to believe anything. No, then 100% of the people will have to cooperate and participate in this to make sure that the virus cannot spread, and that through the people who are already infected, a percentage of the people will probably die, and they should be left without help to make sure that the medical staff does not get affected too. It is not something that you want to do. So the moral choice is like that, and the practical choice is like that too. The practical choice might mean that you can't travel if you don't take a vaccine. It might be that you can't participate in concert and all kind of other activities. And as a result of that, whole ranges of things will be eradicated from our society, and we will be forced back into a more isolationist kind of existence, where family units are going to be important, and where it will become harder, for instance, to find partners, because you need to first certify in a particular kind of way that you're not going to be infected by other people, especially when more vaccines are going to come, especially when more viruses are going to come, which at this point, unfortunately, is likely. So what should we do? Should we take vaccine or not? Me personally, I'm going to take the vaccine because it's practical. I wouldn't be able to travel to China, I'm pretty sure, if I wouldn't have a vaccine. And there will be more countries where it will be very difficult to go to if you don't take a vaccine. And there's then practical reasons. Because I also want to take my children. My children, of course, they will have to have the vaccine too. So there's the moral part, there's the practical part, and as a Taoist, being practical is my first priority, and I take the gamble then to take the vaccine. That's my part. I've already accepted the fact that the pandemic is there, and I have taken into account that a lot of things have to be done. One thing that I advise everybody, no matter what you do, whether you take the vaccine or you don't take the vaccine, understand why you do or you don't do things. Don't go for rumors, but try to find the reality behind things. Fight for openness of data and fight for decommercialization of healthcare and education in general. There are other things that we might like to have more influence over as an individual, but all these things, they require education. So make sure you use your time to educate yourself. Go look into biology, go follow courses in Chinese medicine or Ayurveda or anything else like that. Try to verify if their language is correct. As soon as they use falsifying language, like is the case in 90% of all Chinese medicine courses, they use falsifying languages, so they falsify facts. Try to make sure that you get a course and that you force the educators to actually really educate and not think about their tian, their money, right? Because most schools, they exist as a company, as a business. And as a result of having many students, everybody gets well paid. All over the world, schools are more or less similar like that. The education program of a school should be at least as serious as a Western medical educational program. It should nowadays, because of the requirements of governments, include Western medicine, but it should be done in a comparative setting, not in a paraphrasing setting, in the sense that Western medicine is seen as a priority for your recognition in your profession, because Western medicine doesn't understand Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine doesn't understand Western medicine. These things are not compatible. They have two different kind of worldviews and they have different kind of goals, and understanding the goals is of course very important. And in that case, everybody, because of having free access or good access to real education, can start to contribute to, building up data in any kind of, if any kind of problems occurs, and then start contributing from a real validation of things by having the proper training to contribute. So I hope this was helpful for you, and this is going to be a public posting, of course. Part of it is my ranting, part of it is my trying to be objective and give you different kind of options and choices to make clear why, on what basis you should or could decide if you should take a vaccine or not. It is definitely not an easy choice for a lot of people. I noticed that because every class that I give, every meeting that I have, every meetup that I have with people, it is going to come up with somewhere in the conversation, and they very often ask me for my opinion. And it's not that I'm tired of giving my opinion, but there's always too little time to offer all the different kind of context. But this is more or less basically what it is. And I will refrain from what I think you should do, but I also given you my reasons what I'm going to do. But because I'm just a puppet, of course, my vaccine will come very late, and I can only book a ticket for China after I have my guaranteed vaccine. So what do you do? What are you going to do? Let me know.